Piper is one of the best anomaly agents in the game, and yes, that's even when comparing her to the likes of Jane, Bernice, and Yanagi. Make no mistake, this spinning assaulting tornado does an impressive amount of damage through her anomalies, and the rate at which she does so is equally surprising. With that, I'll be breaking down everything you need to know today so that your next Piper team becomes even more OP, and without further ado, let's get into it. But before we go any further, guys, today I want to talk about Book of Yogg, because to be honest, they have a lot of what I'm looking for. They have the gacha, they have the summon system, they have the AFKing that I've personally been enjoying from other titles currently, but also they've got loads of skins in addition to, well, getting on once a day basically and receiving an insane amount of rewards while literally not playing the game. Now, to be honest, if it was just an AFK idle game, I would definitely agree. Sometimes you like to spice things up, and as a Zenless main myself, I actually enjoy, well, being able to play the game sometimes too. And that's exactly what Book of Yogg gives you access to, with it also giving you access to manually fight against whatever enemies or bosses that you encounter while progressing through the story, clearing content, you name it, they have it. Now, to be clear, story and farming is not the only thing that is available for Book of Yogg, because they've also got things like PvP, yes, PvP and a gacha game, by the way, in addition to a new guild battle system that honestly looks pretty cool. If you don't take my word for it, take a look at the insane list of skins that I'm gonna put on screen right now for you to appreciate and enjoy, and this is all waiting for you the second that you join me in Book of Yogg. Thank you again for Book of Yogg for sponsoring today's video. Piper is constantly compared to the likes of Jane because they are both anomalies and share the physical element. However, Piper differs from Jane because she is much more reliant on her energy. Her core gameplay revolves around spinning using her EX special and applying anomalies at a quick pace, and this is where Piper can synergize with other anomaly agents to apply disorder. Whether it's with characters like Grace, Lucy, or even Bernice, Piper's anomaly buildup is strong enough to clear all content in the game. Now, despite all this, she does still have weaknesses, which we will go over soon, but put simply, she's an anomaly terror. Let's break down her kit. Piper's core passive is the first way she buffs herself, and this involves introducing a new mechanic known as power. When Piper's ultimate or EX special hits an enemy, she gains 1 stack of power with a max of 20, lasting 12 seconds. What makes power special is that it increases Piper's physical anomaly buildup rate by 4% per stack, meaning that she can increase her anomaly application by an insane amount at max. Next, we have Piper's additional ability, which also involves the power buff. When Piper is paired with another physical agent or someone from her own faction, having at least 20 stacks of power will then increase all squad members' damage by 18%. Between just her core passive and additional ability, Piper already shows a deep reliance on this power buff, and as we'll see through the rest of her kit, maintaining this is honestly extremely important for her damage. On that note, let's talk about Piper's basic attacks. This is a 4-part combo that is actually pretty misunderstood. At a glance, the swings that Piper performs are pretty clunky and deal very little damage, which would then suggest that Piper's basics are worthless. However, with the added passive that her EX special has, her first 3 basic attacks will actually be much more important for maintaining her damage. With that, let's now talk about Piper's special attacks. Piper's special attack is made up of 2 parts: a tire spin that starts her whirlwind motion, and a follow-up spin that continues the attack but consumes energy while being cast. This second cast is the important version for Piper since it applies anomaly fast and deals decent damage, but both attacks come with a few important things to know. One major advantage while in the EX special spinning motion is that she gains increased anti-interrupt and 40% reduced damage. This is helpful for her survivability since Piper is typically forced to stand in front of elites or bosses and spin, but additionally, if she uses the first 3 hits of her basic attack, uses a dash attack, or performs dodge counter, she can actually skip some of the slow vulnerable build-up time in her initial tire spin attack to then use a more impactful version instead. This means her initial startup time using the weak first special attack can then be exchanged for a faster and higher anomaly generating attack. This saves her a few seconds of potentially wasted time, which is extremely helpful, but this also does leave her with a few weaknesses. If performing the first 3 hits of her basic attack as a way to skip ahead, she is of course much more vulnerable to hits from bosses or elites while she's mid-swing. If she tries to use a dodge counter, this is then heavily reliant on waiting for a boss to attack first. And finally, her dash attack shares similar weaknesses to the 3 basic attacks, but honestly this one feels roughly the same as performing 3 basics since you're going to be vulnerable anyway. The one advantage that I do think performing a dash attack has over the others is that it can transition into a dodge counter if you time it properly, alongside, well, not getting hit between 3 different basic attacks. But otherwise, all these have roughly the same feeling or weaknesses / moments where they shine. Speaking of dodge dodge abilities, let's now address Piper's. Her dodge itself is standard. Her dash attack is useful for skipping the weak early hits of her special attack, and her dodge counter is the highest value skill she has, assuming she's able to perform it. Now, aside from the ability to skip ahead to a more powerful spin, these moves are simply ways to avoid damage for Piper, and in most cases they won't be used anyways since Piper will be busy spinning or generating energy off field. Now, given that Piper's assist follow-ups and defensive assists can apply decent days in Anomaly, they also have good value when Piper has access to them. Traditionally, however, the best use for Piper's assists is simply the days that it provides to the team, since Piper is just an Anomaly character. However, after additional testing and observations across boss fights, the Anomaly buildup from support agents or defensive assist performers is actually notable over time. This makes Piper's own assists especially valuable since she can apply more Anomaly and stun enemies simultaneously, but as always, this is just her assist abilities and is dependent of course on boss and encounter. Piper's chain attack is another decent source of Anomaly, but as with most Anomaly based agents, the base damage on most of her abilities are lacking. Therefore, this is a decent Anomaly builder, but not much more than that. It is also worth mentioning that her chain attack isn't super long in length animation wise, so performing or ending on it is also not too bad. Contrary to popular belief, ultimates on DPS characters are not always amazing. This is especially true with Piper, whose ultimate provides power stacks to the team alongside generating Anomaly, but doesn't really offer much more than that. This doesn't mean that her ultimate is useless since it does generate an entire bar worth of Anomaly, but unfortunately, compared to even other supports in certain cases using their ultimates, priority on using Piper's ultimate is not that high. Now for skill upgrades, this is a tough situation. Outside of her EX special and core passive, most of Piper's skills are situational, though all can be helpful. For the most part, skills like her basic attacks and dodges won't see much value in being upgraded all things considered, but as with any other agent, the slight added value in increasing days multipliers can always prove useful. With this, upgrading EX special, core passive, then upgrading the rest of her skills is equally fine. However, personally, I do find that the assists are used much more often than her basic or dodge. Fortunately for Piper, her combos are actually pretty simple. Given how strong her AoE and spinning is, using one combo with slight variations will cover both her bossing and non-bossing combos. Regardless, let's begin with a way to deal with multiple waves of enemies. To start this off, you begin with a stun from an ally, then end with a chain attack with Piper. This can be followed with 3 basic attacks or a dash attack followed then by her EX special to spin the enemies into pieces. Alternatively, most multi-wave enemies will also disappear if Piper performs a dash attack or 3 basic attacks into EX special, regardless if they are stunned or even without the help of an ally. This does come at the cost of more energy and the potential for enemies to move, but this is just another solution that may work. For bosses, you'd be surprised to know that the combo remains relatively the same. The only difference here is that most bosses will not die without being stunned or without your Piper being buffed. Therefore, the combo will once again begin with a stunner, and you follow this with a chain attack from the support, who ideally buffs the team. Then you end with Piper to take the field and perform a chain attack. Following this, performing a dash attack or 3 basics, followed by her EX special, and ending with either her own ultimate or another agent's ultimate is ideal. Normally, this is where the loop would repeat itself, but depending on whose ultimate you use, things can change once again. Now, I won't go too far in depth as it would take forever to account for every scenario, but do know that you can also end the chain attack early and allow Piper to get additional hits of her EX special or apply Anomaly under a longer window of stun. In general though, this is all a good starting point. Now on to builds. Piper has a few sets that perform well on her, but as always, it is dependent on the team as well. For the majority of builds and team setups, Fanged Metal will be her best in slot. The added element damage, the synergy with the 4-piece set effect, this disc drive choice is perfect for Piper in every way. However, 4-piece Freedom Blues or 4-piece Hormone Punk can also perform well, especially because of her team compositions. Whether it's her short time on field nature or the fact that she can be paired with characters like Nekomata, these 2 disc drive choices are definitely ideal when trying to optimize specific builds, especially later on in the game. As a disclaimer, setups like this do require a lot of planning and understanding the content that you're bringing these characters into, but as I've seen a few of you guys mention in my previous videos, there are times when specific unconventional builds for specific optimizations will actually work out higher in your favor. For 2-piece set options, subset roles are king, and therefore Fanged Metal, Chaos Jazz, Swing Jazz for energy, or Freedom Blues will just work too. Truthfully, the 2-piece set option, as I've mentioned probably countless times at this point in my videos, is really not that big a deal, and therefore you should just use what you like. For my personal recommendations, however, I would take 4-piece Fanged Metal with 2-piece Chaos Jazz or Freedom Blues as my set choices. Now onto stats. Substat wise, Piper is your average anomaly based character, so therefore attack percent and anomaly proficiency is best. In terms of disc drives, something I'd now recommend, especially with anomaly characters, is to at least have 1 roll of anomaly and 1 roll of attack percent before before continuing and rolling pieces. But if you're earlier on in the game, feel free to use whatever works so long as you can clear content with it. For main stats, we will prioritize the following for Piper. In her 4th slot, an anomaly proficiency disc. In her 5th slot, an attack percent or a physical damage percent disc. And lastly, for her 6th slot, an anomaly mastery or attack percent disc. Now, before you ask, I do think that anomaly mastery has honestly insane value on any anomaly character in general, and that's simply because of how valuable getting to fill up an anomaly bar quickly is. In a majority of tests and calculations, anomaly buildup is one of the last sources that can be buffed, and with this, anomaly mastery in the 6th slot typically outperforms any other choices, including energy regen or attack percent. Now, if you are trying to run a team composition like Nekomata, Piper, and Caesar, which is monophysical, there isn't, of course, an insane amount of value to running anomaly mastery on that specific team, but that's because the amount of anomaly that you generate between 3 physical characters sharing the same element is extremely high. And with this, especially if you're running Piper on Freedom Blues, attack percent is the better option. Now, keep in mind that this is for a very specific team composition, however, so you should make adjustments on the fly depending on what team composition or what encounter you're using her with. To summarize, my recommendation is a 4th slot anomaly proficiency disc, a 5th slot physical disc, and a 6th slot anomaly mastery disc drive for disorder physical teams, but otherwise, if you're running a mono physical team, attack percent for the 3 physical agent combo. Side note, energy regen was initially recommended in certain cases with characters like Piper. That is no longer the case, and you should definitely not do it anymore just because of how much insane value anomaly mastery and attack percent honestly give to Piper. Now, for sample stat lines, I have 2 stat lines for you to consider. On the low end, having 2,250 attack, 150 anomaly mastery, and 300 anomaly proficiency is ideal, but at the higher end, having near 2,600 to 2,800 attack, 150 anomaly mastery, but this time having near 375 to 400 anomaly proficiency is going to be your end game goal. As always, this will vary depending on which disk drives and W engines that you have, but this is now a great time to talk specifically about the W engines. Piper's best W engine is both a blessing and a curse. Her signature outperforms almost all alternatives while being an A-rank W engine, but the best performer W engine wise on Piper is Jane Doe's by far. The additional physical damage, the increased stats, the anomaly proficiency alone truly makes this a powerful addition to Piper. But there is one thing that you'd need to adjust for assuming you use this W engine, and that's the increased usage of dash attacks in order to maintain this passive. Now, this isn't that big a deal for Piper since she does gain decent value when using dash attacks and following them up with EX specials, but it does mean that using her basic 3 combo will be utilized less, and you'll also have to weave them in a little bit more, as normally a character like Jane gains good value from her W engine because she's using dodge and dash attacks all the time. Now, for her signature W engine, the ability to proc one of 3 potential buffs is extremely powerful, and this is the reason why it formally outcompeted any other W engines, especially at 1.0 launch. This includes Fusion Compiler and even Electro Lip Gloss, but yet again, there is another issue. This W engine isn't purchasable through the store for puzzle pieces, and therefore, even with that outperforming other choices, you will need to obtain it through a gacha system. Now, this isn't an insane flaw, to be honest, since most players by this point at least have 1 copy of this W engine, and I've gotta say, it really does perform amazingly on Piper, but in terms of what rank you'll have this W engine, you won't exactly have the R5 performance that most calculations compare to others, so therefore, although it is really powerful, keep in mind that you have slightly less value off of the W engine, assuming that you don't have it maxed. Now, to end the section on Roaring, I do want to say that in terms of feel and performance, the added build-up rate and stat bonuses still make Piper way easier and more satisfying to play, but that begs the question, what should you use if you don't have either of those 2 options? Well, I have the answer actually for that too. Weeping Cradle or Rainforest Gourmet. Assuming that you aren't fighting multiple enemies or stunning too quickly, Cradle is one of your best choices for the added attack and anomaly it provides. Now, if you are for some reason fighting multiple enemies, as you probably do with Shiyu defense, Rainforest Gourmet is still very easy and effective as an alternative W engine choice. Now, with this, my recommendation is Weeping Cradle or Piper's own Roaring W engine, assuming you don't have any S ranks, but keep in mind that with all anomaly agents, the difference in W engine choice is not life-changing, especially if you aren't using an S rank. Now, this is of course because of situation and where certain W engines outshine others, so in most cases, using whatever you have leveled already will end up outperforming the rest. Piper's Mindscapes are actually quite powerful, so let's break them down now. Her first Mindscape increases her stack limit of power to 30 with a 50% chance to gain an additional stack of power when using her EX special or ultimate, and this is part 1 of why these Mindscapes are actually pretty good. Her second Mindscape increases increases her movement speed while using her EX special, and also increases the physical damage dealt by her downward smash through EX special and ultimate. Now, this, like the first Mindscape, adds not only to her overall damage output, but also makes her much smoother to play. Following the trend of more quality of life, Piper's fourth Mindscape provides energy to herself whenever a squad member inflicts anomaly on an enemy, and this makes her energy problems pretty much disappear. But now, the final Mindscape is not just amazing because it extends how long you can keep power as a buff, but also because it extends the duration limit of Piper's EX special. More spinning, more damage, what's not to love? For Piper's team compositions, I do have two that I believe work the best, but I also have a few others that I found success with too. The first two teams are Bernice, Piper, Lucy, and Yanagi, Piper, Caesar. Now, starting with Bernice, Piper, Lucy, this team excels at burning off-field 24/7, but it does require having a Lucy that is pretty well built to compensate for the off-field time that Bernice and Piper will have for themselves. This isn't to say that they perform poorly once again, but given that each character is super reliant on energy, one of them eventually has to stay on field to perform dodge assists, counters, or basics. For me, I then found that Lucy was the best candidate for this, but it also then involved me investing way more into my Lucy so that she could actually have value on the field. Now, this team can also substitute Lucy out for Caesar, since while Caesar will provide shields to the team frequently, there is still an extra factor to consider, and that's that if Lucy has access to her sixth Mindscape, you can also lose out potentially on 6 extra fireball anomalies when Piper uses her own EX special with the synergy from Lucy's Mindscapes. Yanagi, Piper, Caesar follows a similar pattern of applying anomaly with Piper and then swapping off to another agent to apply big disorder damage. But as you'll soon notice, Lucy and Caesar are typically exchangeable with one another, and this is dependent of course on whether you need more damage or whether you need more shields. This team also plays similar to a Bernice Yanagi team composition, with Piper applying her anomaly quickly, but then swapping to Yanagi afterwards. With how fast Piper applies anomalies, Yanagi is then able to clear all enemies off field quickly and efficiently. Now, truthfully, these teams have characters like Bernice or Yanagi who take over any team composition and deal infinite damage regardless. So with that, I also have a few other teams that aren't nearly as limited, like Grace, Piper, Rina, Piper, Kaleda, Lucy, and Nekomata, Piper, Lucy. These are team compositions that still rely on Piper, who does perform amazingly as the sub DPS who spins and applies anomalies as quickly as possible, but in these scenarios, she's able to shine a little bit more and you could see more of the pronounced value. As always though guys, it's completely up to you and your account to decide whether any of these teams are worth investing in, so do with this information what you will. That's going to be it for today's video though guys. Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed, if you learned something, or if you want to support the channel, feel free to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Make sure to check out the rest of my socials if you want to find out anything else related to ZenlessZoneZero or anything in between. I'll see you guys on the next one though. Stay safe, stay healthy.